Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. In this lecture we are going to discuss about sets. Sets are basic collections of objects, and in defining algebraic structure we sometimes need such kind of entities, and we must define certain operations or rules over those entities to define that algebraic system. In the next series of lectures we will see that how such kind of an algebraic structure is defined and how such kind of objects and their rules or operations over them are defined. To begin with, we shall start in this lecture with the notions of sets and their operations over it. Set is a collection of well-defined and distinct objects. So well-defined means that every element in the set should follow certain rules to be inside it, and distinct means that no two elements are the same. So the example given here says that every element is a square of an integer. So that is the well-defined notion. And no two elements inside this set are same. So that is a distinct notion. So this set comprises of all squares of integers ranging from 2 to 10. So therefore 2 square, 3 square, 4 square are all part of this set. We call an element to be a member of this set if it is present inside the set. Otherwise it is not a member. So 25, which is 5 square, and 64, which is 8 square, are member of this set, whereas 50 and 72 are not a square number, so it doesn't belong to this set. We say member to indicate belongs to and by this symbol, and not a member to indicate not belongs to by this symbol. The number of elements present in the set are the cardinality of a set. We call the term cardinality to express the number of elements. Here, since in the set S, we have 2 square up to 10 square, so the cardinality is 9. Depending on the cardinality, if there are finite number of elements in the set, we say the set is finite. So the set S having 9 elements is a finite set. Whereas if the number of elements in a set is infinite, of infinite cardinality, then we say the set is infinite set. So for example, the set of even numbers, the set of integers, all these are infinite sets. So as this one, T, where T is defined as 2 to the power 0, 2 to the power 1 and so on, where it is the well-defined rule is that it is 2 to the power y, every element follows 2 to the power y, where y is an integer and it is greater than or equal to 0. So this is an infinite set. We call a set A to be a subset of another set B if every element of A is also a member of B. So it means that formally we write it this way, that A is a subset of B by this notation, where for all x that every element of A implies that that element also belongs to B. So every element of A is present in B. Just the negation of it, we say that A is not a subset of B using this notation, where in this formal logical formula, if we push a not of it, so this not can be pushed inside by making it there exists x. So it will be there exists x, x belongs to A and x doesn't belongs to B, which means formally that there is an element which is present in A but not in B. Therefore, not all the elements in A are also in B. So A is not a subset of B. For example, the set of composite integers Z, if I define a set between 2 to 100, all the composite integers, for example, 4, 6, 8, all these composite integers which are non-prime. Obviously, the set S that we have defined is a subset of R, because S being a square of a number is definitely composite, but this composite set has more of them. So every element of S belongs to R, therefore S is a subset of R. We say two sets are equal if both side elements are the same. So if every elements of A are also in B and every elements of B are also in A. So these two have exactly same elements. Formally we write A is a subset B and B is a subset of A. So these two are the same. So for all x, x belongs to A if and only if, or logically it is equivalent to say x belongs to B. We define proper subset as a subset where every element of A is obviously an element of B, but there are also more elements in B. So we define it this way, that for all x, every element of A is also an element of B, but there exists an Y which is not in A. So it means that there is some extra element in B. Null set means that the set contains no element. We denote it using phi or using curly braces with no elements. So for example, consider this set where Z is odd and X and Y are all odd. So I am asking you to provide an odd set of odd numbers by adding two odd numbers, which can never be possible, because if X and Y are odd, then Z must be even. So if I do not allow it, then this set contains no element and we call it as a null set. Remember that the cardinality of null set is 0 because there are no elements, but null set is not equal to this set which says there is one element with 0, and null set is also not equal to this set which says that there is one element which is null, and this says there is no element. So one element with 0 as well as one element with null will have cardinality 1, and therefore these are not the null sets. The power set of a set is defined as all possible subsets, a collection of all possible subsets for that set, and we denote it using P of A or sometimes 2 to the power A. So if A is 1, 2, 3, then try to find out all possible subsets. So one subset is null, another subset could be 1, 2 and 3 and so on. So therefore, the power set of A will be the set of or the collection of all subsets inside it. So essentially, the number of elements in the power set will be 2 to the power of the number of elements of that in that particular set. So here there are 8 elements in the power set because there are 3 elements in this set. So 2 cube number of elements. Why this is the case? Because we are trying to create the power set by choosing all possible subsets, and therefore we can choose no element out of it in NC0 ways. We can take one element and form a set in NC1 ways and so on. So therefore we can choose NCk subsets of size k, and if we add all these combinations, we get there are 2 to the power n possibility, where n is the cardinality of set A. So therefore the number of elements in the power set is obviously 2 to the power the number of elements in that particular set, whose power set we are computing. There are certain properties that are valid over sets. So if A, B, C are 3 sets, then we can say that if A is a proper subset of B, then obviously A is also a subset of B, because to go by the proper subset, it means B have all the elements that A possesses, but also it has some extra. So definitely it will be a subset since it has all the elements. But this is not valid because this does not imply this, because there are conditions where this part is true but this part is false. Consider the set A and B both are equal. Then this will be true. Since A and B both are equal, we can say A is a subset of B. But A and B both are equal is not a proper subset, because B should have at least one member which is not present in A to have this proper subset relation going. So this does not imply this one. Similarly, we have other naive formulas also, that A is a proper subset of B if and only if A is a subset of B and A is not equal to B. So A is a subset of B and A is not equal to B eliminates the fact that these two sets are equal. But since it's a subset, so that means if they are not equal, so B must have one or more elements extra than A, plus all the elements that are there in A. So definitely A is a proper subset of B. A not equal to B if and only if A is not a subset of B or B is not a subset of A. So this happens because you see that when do we call A is equal to B? We call A equal to B when A is a subset of B and B is a subset of A. So just negate it, you will get this formula. Just logically negate the same thing. So this happens either you have A is not a subset of B or you have B not a subset of A, then we can say these two are not equal. Null set is obviously a subset of any set, and if a set is not empty, then null set is obviously a proper subset of this set, because this set null obviously contains by this set, as well as this set is not null means some elements are there extra. A particular set is also a subset of itself because they are equal, so this relation is anyway valid. A set is also a subset of the power set of that set, because you can see here that if A is 1, 2, 3, so somewhere I am computing all the subsets into the power set, so somewhere the set itself will come inside it. So therefore power set contains this set as well, so it's a proper subset of this. If A is a subset of B, then definitely the cardinality of A must be less than equal to B. If both are equal, it will be equal. If it is a proper subset, it is less than. These are obvious because by the definition of subset and proper subset, we say that all members of A should be in B. In proper subset, there are some extra in B. So their strict inequality holds. Here there is less than equal to. If A is a subset of B and B is a subset of C, then obviously we can say A is a subset of C. Because if X belongs to, all the X in A also belongs to B and all the elements in B also belongs to C, then definitely all the elements of A will also belongs to C. Similarly, if A is a proper subset of B and B is a proper subset of C, then we can say A is a proper subset of C. A is a subset of B, B is a proper subset of C, so A is a proper subset of C, because even if these two are equal, this dominates, here C dominates with the number of elements being more than B. So therefore the proper subset valid, and so is the last condition. We use certain kind of sets frequently, and let us upfront define it, because we will be using in this particular lecture and the next lectures with these sets often. So by this N, we say that set of non-negative natural numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. Z is the set of integers, positive, negative as well as 0. Z plus, Z superscript plus is the set of positive integers. So it says that X belongs to Z where X is greater than 0. Q is a set of rational numbers. It means it can be denoted as a fraction where A by B and where A and B are integers. And obviously B not equal to 0 to eliminate the division by 0 factor. Q plus is the set of positive rational numbers. Q star is the set of non-zero rational numbers. R is the set of reals. R plus is the set of positive reals. R star is the set of non-zero reals. C is the set of complex numbers. C star is the set of non-zero complex numbers. Now if you see that each set itself is an object over which we try to define certain relations, and if you try to think about how this particular nomenclature of different sets has come out, you will figure that when we started off with only the set of natural numbers, now we try to define certain operation called subtraction between these. People found out that, let's say 1 minus 3, which gives rise to minus 2. People doesn't find out any object inside this set. So that operation becomes undefined. So to define that operation, they started to figure out the set of integers. Now when they started to figure out the set of integers, to define the division operation between any of them, they again figure out that, let's say 2 by 3 does not belong to this set anymore. So they started to figure out rational numbers. When they started to figure out rational numbers, then they figure out that there are certain particular numbers, let's say root over 7, which cannot be expressed using A by B form. So they've started to form about the real numbers. And then when they started to form about the real numbers, then they suddenly found that there are certain equations like x square plus 1 equal to 0, whose roots are not real anymore. So they go on building the complex number set. So that's why these hierarchical sets, different sets are developed, and you see that there are many operations defined over it which can also be defined inside the members. For example, addition of the set of integers will result an integer which is inside from this set. However, division operation will result in a particular number which is outside this set and belongs to rational number set. So this way, this particular algebraic structures and operations are formulated over the very frequently used set. We will try to remember this kind of notations for our next part of the lecture. we will also use some additional notations which says that if for each n belong to positive integer, z suffix n, we will try to say all integers from 0 to n minus 1. So z suffix n is the n integers from 0 to n minus 1. You may think it as an index of an array. So if I say Zn, it means that there are array with number n, so these are the indexes. For real number AB with a less than b, we define certain intervals. So this is a closed interval where an element can belong to from a to b, including ab both. This is an open interval where an element, so this is the set of all real numbers x, where the element can range from a to b but cannot be equal to a or b, so it is less than. There are half open intervals which says that an element is less than a but it could be equal to b. It's this half open interval says that it could be, the real could be equal to a but it should be strictly less than b. So we will use these notations in the this lecture as well as in next series of lectures. So now with this basic fundamentals about the sets which you have already know or have already encountered in previously also, let us try to revisit some of the counting formulas and try to see how this set theory and its relation help us to count. For example, suppose we want to prove that n choose r plus 1 is equal to n minus r by r plus 1 n choose r. So if you look at this formula, what we are trying to deduce is, we are trying to find out that n choose r plus 1 value from the n choose r elements. So what is n choose r plus 1? So whenever we have chosen n choose r, means that the number of sets that we can form which have r elements. So we are given n element set, the number of subsets that we can form with r elements is n choose r. So from this, when we are trying to compute n choose r plus 1, therefore each of those r element subset must be supplied with additional one element, then that subset will form an r plus 1 element subset. So how many ways we can form an r plus 1 element subset from an r element subset? Just by adding one elements from the remaining n minus r. So take this example. Suppose we have n equal to 4, s equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 elements set. So we computed all possible 2 element subsets. 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4, 3, 4. So there are 6 of them. So this is our NC2. So this is our 4C2 NCR. Now we want to compute 4C3 from here. First of all, let us count that if I try to build a 3 element subset from this, each of these 2 elements, how many of them are possible? So from A1, I can add 3 here to make the set 1, 2, 3. I can also add 4 here to make the set 1, 2, 4. Both are of 3 elements. So for each of these NCR number of subsets, I can take n minus r remaining elements and can put in. Suppose for A5, I can take 1 to put in here. I can take 3 to put in here to make it 3 element subset. Therefore, the total number of possibility here in this case will be n minus r into NCR, which is this formula, which is 2 into 4C2, which is 12. Now our problem is that, consider the set A1 from which you are computing a 3 element set by injecting 3 inside it. So it will form 1, 2, 3. Consider a set A4 where you are injecting 1 to form the same set 1, 2, 3. Now when you have multiplied 2 into the number of possibilities here, you have duplicated those counts. So how many such duplications can happen? So see, each r plus 1 subset can be formed by r plus 1 different r element subset, because 3 element subset 1, 2, 3 has been formed here from here 1, 2 by inserting 3, from this set by inserting 2, and from this set by inserting 1. So therefore A1, A2 and A4, these 3 sets help us to construct the same 1, 2, 3. So each r plus 1 set if I eliminate one element, then that R element set is my parent from where I am derived. So therefore, I have to divide it by R plus 1 to get the exact count, because this count n minus R into NC1 repeatedly counts everything R plus 1 times. So if you divide it, you see that you will get the answer 4 for our example, which is 4C3. So it means that it is n minus R by R plus 1 NCR. So see how we took this problem, just not by solving it algebraically, but took this problem into map it into building subsets. That n choose R are the number of R element subsets. We will try to construct R plus 1 element subsets from it. So every R element subset can take remaining n minus R elements one by one to form different R plus 1 element subsets. So a total of n minus R into NCR possibilities are there. But the problem is each R plus 1 element subset can now form from R plus 1 different parents. So therefore, the same subset is repeated R plus 1 times. So I have to divide that to get the final answer. So n choose R plus 1 equal to this form. Let us also do some more examples of this nature. You have seen that in binomial theorem we have computed NC0 plus NC1 plus NC2, where the base thing changes and we get equal to 2 to the power n. But in this case our base thing is R, that is standstill. So how do we compute this, which is the answer of n plus 1 CR plus 1. So first of all, try to look at the right hand side. What does it say in terms of combinatorics? It says that I need to choose R plus 1 element sets from n plus 1 element set. So forget about the left side. Let me tell you a strategy by which I am choosing that R plus 1 element sets. I can choose, let's say that n plus 1 element sets are numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4 up to n plus 1. So the R plus 1 element subset that I choose may have smallest element 1 and rest elements are more than it. Plus all the subsets that I choose that have smallest element 2 and the remaining are more than it. In this way, if I try to add how many subsets are possible, finally I will get everything. So essentially what we are trying to do is that from this n plus 1 element set, we are trying to choose R plus 1 elements, assuming the minimum element is 1, how many of them are possible, plus minimum element is 2, how many of them are possible, plus minimum element 3, how many of them are possible. So when you freeze a minimum element, therefore you have taken one element from the R plus 1 element to construct. So you are remained with R elements. So when you choose a minimum element, so n plus 1 minus that minimum element are your choice area from where you need to choose R elements. So with the smallest element I, it can be done using n plus 1 minus I, see R ways, choose R ways. And you have to add by pivoting smallest element in every place. So smallest element equal to 1, 2 up to a position where we are remaining with only R plus 1 elements including that smallest. So it is up to a position which is n plus 1 minus R plus 1. So we have R plus 1 elements only. So we cannot go beyond that to find another smallest. So therefore the number of possibility is this many ways when your smallest element is I, and your smallest element can range from 1, 2 up to this. So these are the number of possibilities which will equal to choosing R plus 1 element from n plus 1, because there are no other ways possible. Just it will imply the proof, because if you unfold this summation, it will give rise to this one. I equal to 1 give rise to n plus 1 minus 1 CR, so it is NCR, the rightmost for this part. Then it is n minus 1 CR up to, if it is n plus 1 minus R plus 1. So you will see that n plus 1 minus of this will give rise to this one. So this formula is true, and we proved it using set and subset concepts. instead of trying to do it algebraically. Another example. How do you prove that sum I from 0 to n I NCi equal to the right side without doing algebraic or binomial distribution kind of maths? So to analyze, first let us see that what does this particular part says. N choose I means I am trying to choose a subset of I elements from n elements, and n choose I are the number of such possibilities. So n choose I says the number of choices for subset of I length. Remember I is the size of each of them. So therefore I am adding up the sizes of all the subsets of length I. So 0 into NC0. So the size of having zero element subset is 0 into NC0. There are n possibilities of one element subset because NC one number of one element subset possible. So we are adding 1 into NC1, 2 into, so it is size into the number of subsets of that size. So what will be the equality? Let us try to think in this line. For an n element subset, the size of subset with I elements plus the size of its complement is equal to n, right? Because when you choose a subset of I elements, its complement is basically the remaining elements from the n element subset, so its cardinality is n minus I. So if you add the subset of I elements with the subset of its complement size, this together will give rise to n. Now you list all of them. So I list subset of size 0 with its complement, that is the whole set. I list subset of size 1 and its complement is the whole set. So there are NCi number of such subset with I elements, and similarly these many number of complements are also there. So if I add all of them, what I will get is that I will get the number that I want 2 times, right? Because NCi is the number of subsets with I elements, and the similar complement together I am taking somewhere that complement is also getting, so that complement size is n minus I, and when I am choosing a subset of n minus I element, then the complement of size of I is getting added. So 2 times whatever the answer would be, if I add all of them, so n into all these numbers, if I add, it will be 2 times my answer. So this is 2 into sum of ni into n minus I, which is equal to, you see that this is equal to n into the number. So because every time I am choosing these many subsets and my sum total is n. So n into these many subsets every time. So this sum you know, because this sum is 2 to the power n, so n into 2 to the power n, and it in turn contains everything twice, so you have to divide by 2, implying the proof. One final one. Summand means that suppose you are given with a number 8, how many ways you can make 8 by summing only with integers. So 8 can be made by 4 plus 4, it can also be made by 3 plus 5, it can also be made by 4 plus 2 plus 2. So how many number of summands are possible? Take an example. For n equal to 4, first try to see the left side of the equal to. So this is a summand which results 4. 2 plus 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2 plus 1, 1 plus 1 plus 2, all these are summands which results 4. Now how do I make a set correspondence out of it? See, the number of plus, if you write 4 by only once, there should be 3 pluses inside it. Now let us see that if I add some set of pluses together, I correspond it that which plus is I am adding to get this number. So therefore, when I am adding nothing, so all 4 ones are intact, I am not adding any of the pluses, so this is a null set. When I am adding the first one but leaving aside, so my set says that add 1. This says that add 2. That is add the second plus together to form this number. This says that add the third plus. This set says that add the first and second plus together. This set says add the first and third plus. And this set says that add the second and third plus. This set says add all pluses. So therefore you can see that I have a correspondence of this particular number of summands with respect to subsets, where I found that the number of subsets possible with n minus 1 is the answer. So number of subsets possible with n minus 1 is 2 to the power n minus 1. Okay. So this we call the correspondence, counting by correspondence with the set. So where the thing that we are going to count is basically we need to map into the number of sets or some particular type of set counting where we have a one-to-one correspondence, like we have to define a rule when we say that this is a subset, and accordingly here what does it mean. Then if I count this particular number of subsets, I get my answer. So this is another type of using sets for counting. Having said this and having known its implications in counting and as well as any other practical activities, let us now go deeper into finding some other rules and derivations from these sets. Let us define some rules across different sets, like two sets A and B. We say that A union B, that means every element of A is also present here and every element of B is also present here. We call it as, this is the set of all elements where X belongs to, this symbol means such that, so all elements such that X belongs to A or X belongs to B. So X belongs to either any one of them, I take it here. So an example of union is definitely 1, 2, 3 and 2, 3, 4, it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4. Intersection means that the elements that are present in both the sets. So in our example, 2, 3 are the common elements. So A intersection B will be 2 and 3. It says that all the elements X such that X belongs to A as well as X belongs to B, both. Complement means I need all the elements which belongs to my universe but doesn't belongs to A. So definitely if you say complement of A in our example, so all the elements which are not 1, 2, 3, whatever possible. Relative complement means that I want to say that I will take the element of A or keep the element of A by removing the elements that are present in B from A. So it means that A minus B says all the elements of A will be present minus those elements that occur in B. So X belongs to A and X does not belong to B. So formally we also write it using A intersection B bar. So it says the elements belongs to A, intersection all the elements that doesn't belong to A, and if it doesn't belong to B, but if it belongs to A, then it is a member of A minus B. So here A minus B, you see that 1, 2, 3 are belonging to the set A and 2, 3, 4 are belonging to set B. So if you try to see which of the elements are only belonging to A but not in B, only one. So see, just note one thing, B may contain more elements, I doesn't care, but the elements that are common to A must be eliminated from A when we compute A minus B. Symmetric difference means that the elements that are either in A or in B but not both. So these are all the elements which present in A or in B but not present in both of them. So it's not belong to the intersection part of both. We can write it in other ways, that it is all the elements that belongs to both, because X belongs to A or X belongs to B means that the elements belonging to A union B and doesn't belong to A intersect. So this formula according to relative difference says that, see the relative difference logical formula, X belongs to A and X not belongs to B. So you try to apply it here, you say that A union B minus A intersection B, because X belongs to this set and X doesn't belongs to this set, so this is minus. Similarly, A delta B, if we can also write it that in a way that it belongs to A and not B, as well as B and not A. So all the elements that are in intersect position I do not want to keep. I want to keep the elements that are present in A but not in B, and B but not in A. So A intersection B bar union this will be A bar intersection B. This is a mistake. This will be A bar intersection B. So this also says A intersection B bar means A minus B as per our relative complement formula, union B minus A. So see, if A delta B is A minus B union B minus A, so by the rule of commutative rule, so I can also say something union something is, I can write it the opposite way, it becomes B delta A. So A delta B here is the element that are present only in A and the element that are present only in B, but not both. So 1 is present here and 4 is present here. So A delta B in our example is 1, 4, these two elements. So this is a symmetric difference between these two sets. Mutual disjoint means that two sets A and B are said to be mutually disjoint when I do not have any element common. So it means that no element of A and no element of B are same. So in such a case we write that A delta B is equal to A union B because A intersection B is null. So if you see this formula, A delta B is A union B minus A intersection B. So this is null. So it is only A union B. And in such a case, since A and B are totally different sets, so B complement does not take away anything from A. So A intersection B complement is A. Similarly, A complement intersection B is B. So you may prove this one that these four statements are equivalent. That if so, to prove this one, you can say that if A is a subset of B, then you have to prove A union B is B. If A union B is B, you have to prove A intersection B is A. If A intersection B is A, you can prove it means that B complement is a subset of A complement. And circularly, you can prove if B complement is a subset of A complement, then you can prove A is a subset of B. So when you have to prove a set of statement to be equivalent, you need to prove a circular way, or you need to prove that every particular statement can be implying the other and vice versa. So this is a simple proof. I leave it to you as an exercise. I hope you can do it easily. Some laws of set theory that are followed, which some of them we have already used in different contexts like and or not, which is extended for union and intersection. So double complement means the same. Here is the De Morgan's law. It just pushes the bars into individual sets and make the union as intersection. Similar here. Commutative, just now I mentioned A union B is B union A. No changes happen when you switch these two sets. Associativity, you can do the union in any order, intersection in any order, if there are only union and intersection present. Distribution, union can be distributed over intersection as well as intersection can be distributed over unions. Idempotent, A union A is A, intersection A is A. This is idempotency. Identity means that A union phi is A. A intersection the universe is itself A. Inverse law means A union A in A complement is the total universe, because either you are saying that I am inside A or I am outside A, that is you are everywhere. A intersection A complement, so you are saying that a member of A as well as the member that are not in A, this is invalid, or this is a null set because no element can be such. Domination, that universe union A is dominated by universe. Similarly, A intersection null is dominated by the null set. Absorption, so A union A intersection B. A intersection B is obviously a part of A, so it just get absorbed into. And A intersection A union B is obviously this A is a part of A union B, because A union B is either A or more. So so this, since it's an intersection, so only I get to know about A, this gets absorbed. This is absorption law. You can easily prove it formally using such kind of sketch. I have shown one of them showing the distributive law. So when you have to prove something like A union is distributed over intersection, so you can say that, so this, if you have to prove these two are equal, so for every element here is also a member of this set, and every element of this set is also a member of the first one. So we do it by saying logical if and only if. So it says that if X belongs to this, it means X belongs to A, since it's an union, so it's or X belongs to B intersection C, which is equivalent to saying as X belongs to A, or since it says intersection, we can say X belongs to B and X belongs to C both. Now we are in a position where we have logical formula with and or. We just apply the distribution law. So here X belongs to A or X belongs to B, and X belongs to A or X belongs to C. So this means X can be within A as well as within B, so it is union. And this means X can be within A as well as C, so it is intersection. Finally, this and means X should be here as well as here both together. So it's an intersection position where X lies. So this and this gives me the proof of this formula. So all the rest can be proven this way. If you are interested, you can go by this kind of a proof to prove any of the laws. So these are fundamental laws mostly, but we can also derive certain interesting laws by ourselves and have proofs on it. Not necessarily we need to prove just I have shown, but we could use the earlier stated laws to prove it. For example, you see, if I have this kind of a series of unions like A1 union A1 intersection A2, union A1 A2 A3 all intersections, union A1 to A4 intersections, and so on, what does it result? This is a very interesting particular series of intersection unions. If you look carefully, see that A1 union A1 intersection A2 is from the absorption rule, this get absorbed into A1. Similarly, the next two terms in the union, if you see, so this and this union A3, so therefore A3, this union A3 gets absorbed into this particular format. This union, this intersection A4, so this particular part get absorbed into this. So somewhere you will come down to A1 if you go along this, right? So therefore I can say this. So similar thing holds for intersection as well. Same absorption law and same manner you can, so it will also come down to A1. This is interesting. So here for symmetric difference, De Morgan's law is not directly valid, whereas if it is union or intersection, we could have directly made it complement and change the union to intersection and vice versa. But this means A delta B bar is same as A bar delta B. So just to prove jugglery it is, so you know that A delta B is A union B minus A intersection B, and also you know that A delta B is A intersection B bar union A bar intersection B. So I will use this. So now what is this one? Take this one and make a complement. So for this, using De Morgan's law, I complement the first part but keep the second part as it is. The reason being why I keep the second part as it is that what does this intersection this means? This intersection, this bar means A minus B. So this minus the inside part. So what does this means? According to this formula, it means A bar delta B. Similarly, the other way you can do it, you can write this in a different way. Same thing I have written, only this part I have written first, and make the De Morgan's law inside into it, keep it as it is. So some set intersection, some other set bar is that set minus the other set. So that set minus the other set, which is this, going by the formula of this one. So all of these are equal. Similarly, you can also prove this particular statement. So A minus B union C is distributive over this, where union changes to intersection. Similarly, the intersection is distributed over minus. Union gets this minus after gets distributed over the union and intersections in this way. So all of this I leave it to you to prove, as I shown 2 of the cases earlier. I leave it the rest to you to prove. This one equal to A delta B, this is straightforward because you just consider this formula here. What does A bar delta B bar means? It means A bar intersection, this will become B. This is A intersection B bar, the same thing as this. And this is equal to this because this formula I can interchange anywhere, and then this is equal to this. So all of these are just the juggleries, and you can try it out to prove using the fundamental laws that are stated. Some of them I made some derived laws and observations. There are many more, and you can create your own and see how it performs. One particular notion of set is called index sets and partitions, which will be useful in our subsequent lectures. Let us define here at least. So as the name suggests, it's the index of a set, and it also together forms a set. For example, if you see that let my set I is not null, and for all I belongs to I, so this I 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, I say that AI are the sets belongs to universe. So A1, A2, A3 are all my sets. Then I is called an index set, where this is an index. So I denote it as an index. So in practical application, when you try to formally model your, let's say, 2-dimensional arrays, 2-dimensional arrays in programs are a collection of 1-dimensional arrays. So each array is a set of elements, and there are, let's say, j number of them, and j is the index for that set. So when you are saying jth 1-dimensional array, you go to the jth row and access all the elements. So this way it has an implication formally. Later we will see more formal implications of this. However, the set operations, the union is just saying that this means that all the elements that are present, so in either of these, so this means the element, if an element is in A1, I keep it here. If an element is in A6, I keep it here. If an element is in A10, I keep it here. Every element should be present. So there exists an index I where this element belongs, then only it will be in my union set. Similarly, in my intersection, it's just a generalization of whatever we have discussed in union and intersection with 2 sets. It is a generalization over multiple sets. So it says that an element X will be present if it is present in every AI. So if it is not present, let's say if it is present in A1, A2, A3 but not in A4, I will not keep it. So in every AI, this element should be inside. So then only I will just keep it in. So the generalized De Morgan's law, we have done it with 2 sets. It can be generalized over multiple sets. Like if you have union AI and you give a complement of it, so it's just complementing each set and taking an intersection. It pushed in just like De Morgan's law. You can prove it as we have shown some of the proofs. Now a very important definition. What do you mean by a partition of a set? As you can say, partition is just like you can take an example of having a world map where you partition different countries. So it definitely says that you will have a collection of subsets in such a way that the total collection, if you unite all of them, you will get the whole set. And each collection of such subsets are not common, do not have any common element to any other subsets. So formally, if S is a non-entity set which we want to partition and cut it down, so a family of subset Si we will choose, where I is again the index set, so S1, S2, S3, S4 and so on, where if we sum up all the elements or take an union of all the elements, we get the complete set. This is the set cover by S1, S2 and so on, and no elements between 2 sets are common. So for any ij where I is not equal to j, I get this intersection as null set. So these 2 sets we call it as pairwise disjoint. So any pair of the set are disjoint, so no elements are common. mutually disjoint these sets are. An example, so let's say a set which is denoted by 3m, so a set of multiples of 3 where m is an integer, a set which is multiples of 3 plus 1 where m is an integer, and a set which is multiples of 3 plus 2. So 0 plus minus 3 plus minus 6 belongs to first set. Here minus 8, minus 5, minus 2 plus 1, so on. Here minus 7, minus 4, minus 1 plus 2 plus 5 and so on. So you can see that these three set together gives a cover for the set of integers, positive, negative as well as 0. Every number is present if I take an union of these three sets. However, any of these sets do not have an element common. So all the sets in Z0 have distinct element than the elements in Z1 and so in Z2. So each of them are pairwise disjoint. So we call that this Z0, Z1 and Z2 induces a partition on the set of integers. In the next or subsequent lectures, we will see that we will be using such kind of notations and these partitions more often. So to summarize that, we have understood certain kind of principles or rules over the sets and basic subset notations and some laws which to follow. And more importantly, we have seen that many combinatorial arguments, instead of just going by algebraically, if we see that what we are doing in terms of a subset, or if we can map its correspondence with respect to sets, then the number of sets or powered sets will give me the answer of that count. And finally, we have also defined index set and as well as which is called set partitions in this lecture. Thank you.